The U.S. military has said that it would begin a blockade of all Iranian ports hours after collapse of talks. And this comes as Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that Iran was just inches away from a deal with Washington in Islamabad. The U.S. Central Command announced that the blockade will be enforced impartially against vessels of all nations entering or departing Iranian ports and coastal areas, including all Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The statement said that the restrictions will come into effect at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, the U.S. Central Command had clarified that it would not impede vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports and that further instructions for mariners would be forthcoming. Well, Iran's Revolutionary Guards have declared that they are in full control of traffic through Hormuz and warned that they would trap any challenger in a deadly vortex. The announcement came despite a ceasefire in place that is aimed at pausing the 6-week war until April 22nd, with tensions centered on whether the U.S. can force Iran to reopen the strategic Strait of Hormuz, which is another of its key demands in the stalled negotiations. Washington has put the onus of failed talks on Islamic Republic's refusal to abandon its nuclear ambitions. Upon his arrival at Joint Base Andrews, Trump suggested that Iran is in very bad shape and is desperate, adding that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. A U.S. official has said that Iran had rejected Washington's call for an end to all uranium enrichment, the dismantling of all major enrichment facilities, and the transfer of highly enriched uranium.
I think Iran is in very bad shape. I think they're very desperate. We had a meeting that lasted 21 hours. We understand the situation better than anybody, and Iran's in very bad shape. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Will not have. There is no way that they're going to get. They still want it, and they made that clear the other night. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
Iran's Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who led Tehran's delegation in Pakistan, said on turning home that the country would not bow to any threats from Washington, while Navy Chief Shahram Irani called Trump's blockade threat ridiculous. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that Iran engaged with the U.S. in good faith to end the war, but encountered maximalism, shifting goalposts and blockade. On the other hand, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance arrived back in the United States after leading the U.S. delegation in marathon talks with Iran. Earlier, U.S. had said that no member of U.S. delegation remained in Pakistan after two sides also failed to reach agreement and expressed pessimism. And well, to discuss more on the fragile Iran-US ceasefire and the latest developments on the conflict, we were earlier joined by Dov Hakim from Washington, D.C. He is a former Undersecretary of Defense in George W. Bush administration and currently senior advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now, here's what he had to say on the developments.
Well, look, first of all, as Central Command pointed out, any ships entering the Gulf after the blockade begins that are not headed for Iran will be able to get to their destinations, which means, of course, Kuwait and Qatar and so on, Saudi Arabia as well. So that already changes the nature of the oil question. What this blockade will do, and by the way, let me make it clear, I think the United States Navy will be able to have this blockade. I think the Persians, the Iranians are basically bragging about something because they hope they can psychologically get the world to the United States to stop, or get the United States itself to stop. They simply don't have the wherewithal. The IRGC Navy, the Revolutionary Guard Navy, with its small boats, this is something that the Central Command has been aware of for decades, because this is something that the IRGC has practiced. I think they'll be blown out of the water, quite frankly. And what will happen instead is that Iran's ability to get any kind of revenue, say, from places like China, is going to be much more difficult. And frankly, it's going to pressure the Chinese as well, because some 20% of their oil comes from the Gulf, and they will have to turn to countries other than Iran to get the oil that they need. This is going to put Iran in a very difficult position. Yes, the price of oil is going to go up. There's no doubt about that. How far up it goes remains to be seen. Mr. Trump believes that this is a relatively short-term business, and quite frankly, it's difficult to see how the Iranians could hold out against an extended blockade.